Listener discretion is advised. Please, there's a lot of triggers in here, so you've been warned. Oli Olis, this is The Double Face, a true crime podcast. So last week we were talking about Caroline. We left it with Caroline getting away. Mm-hmm. She was the actually only one to get away. Mm-hmm. And we'll mention that as we go along with our notes, is that I will remind you, especially in the trial, that who she is. Mm-hmm. But that's where we left it in part 2. Melissa will take it from here.
Mm-hmm. So in 92, Fred starts working, and he's kind of working constantly at a building company. And actually, his boss plays a part in why he gets arrested.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay. Uh-huh.
He gets arrested, and he and also Rose are charged with rape and abuse of a young girl. At that point, there's no evidence. The girl does not want to testify, so the case is dropped.
Oh, of course.
But
poor baby. But
the detective that was involved in this case still felt like there's something going on here, because there's a lot of, I guess they might have seen his prior charges and thought, I don't know, I feel a little iffy about this. Okay. So at this point, they take away all 5 of their children, right? And they go into foster care. Okay. And this is where they start asking, where's Heather?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay. In February 24th, 1994, because remember, the detective is so adamant about something's going on here, something's going on here, something's going on here. So on February 24th, 1994 is when it's almost like the case breaks wide open.
Okay.
Okay. And Fred is actually at work. Rose is at home. He gets a call from his boss saying, hey, Rose, your wife is calling you. I think you might want to call her back. I couldn't reach you at the time. You should call her back. Calls her back. Rose is like, hey, the police are here with a warrant and they want to dig up the garden.
Oh, remember? Wow.
Yeah. So he's like, he really like rushes out. He stops what he's doing at work and he rushes out. Ends up 6 hours later at the police station. And when
on his own accord?
Yeah, on his own accord.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
He ends up there. I guess he's trying to figure out from the time that he left to the time that he got to the police station. He's trying to figure out, what am I going to say? Because remember, they've gotten away with it for so long. He's probably thinking, well, I'm going to get away with it if I come up with the story.
Oh, so there's a 6 hour gap in between.
Yeah, there's a 6 hour gap. Yeah.
Sorry, I was
6
lost.
hours. Yeah, okay. 6 hours later. And then meanwhile, at home, because remember, he takes off 6 hours in between. He ends up at the police station. Rose is still at home.
He pisses me off for how much of a coward he is.
So Rose is still at home. And in the meantime, I guess she's trying to maybe not to seem like she's involved or anything is happening in the home. And she states, well, I always heard that there was something under the garden, jokingly, right? And I'm just like, why would you say that?
Rose says this?
Rose says this to the police.
I've always heard
there was something under the garden, but I don't believe it.
What intention? To blame Fred or to say it's always been there?
Well, as you go on, you'll see in the trial and leading up to the trial, what happens between Fred and Rosemary.
Okay.
So then that night they're not arrested because obviously there's no evidence.
What?
There's no evidence. So at
this
point,
okay, that first night.
Yeah, that first night. First night. Remember, the kids are gone. They've gone into foster care, so it's just them two.
This is after the 6 hours.
This is the 6 hours because he ends up going home.
Okay.
And when he goes home, him and Rose are kind of walking the dogs, kind of trying to get away from the house.
Trying to get their stories together. When they come back, to their surprise, there's actually a police officer standing guard in front of the garden. No.
And he is not moving from there.
So paint me this picture. Is the garden you said it's in the back?
Yes.
Oh, in the backyard?
Yes.
So do they have authority to do that?
Because remember, they have a warrant.
Oh, that's right.
Yes, they have a warrant.
Oh, okay.
So they have a warrant, but I guess they're still trying to figure out the case and what they're going to do and see. Because mind you, they still don't know what's happening right now. All they know is where's Heather. That's all they know.
Okay.
Where is she? Did she disappear? Did she really go?
They don't know that there's more than that.
They don't know that there's more than this.
Got it.
So he's standing guard at the garden, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the last time you'll see Fred at home. Okay. The next morning, I guess because he's like, the officer's not going nowhere. There's nothing I can do at this point. So Fred confesses to the murder of Heather. He did it all by himself. No, Rose didn't help him. Nobody was involved. So they both get arrested that morning. Fred continues to tell the police, I did it by myself. I acted alone. Rosemary had nothing to do with it. Okay. So that evening, they take Fred back to the house so that way police officers can see where he buried Heather. So he shows them where he buried Heather. And this is where, as they start digging, they notice they find some bones. When they find some bones, they're not matching. So because the bones aren't matching, they're like,
oh,
something else is going on here.
And look, this is an authentic is because she took part of this story. I took some of it. So I honestly don't know all of this. So, I mean, I do know some of it, but I feel like it's
you don't know
brand
the
new.
details. Yeah,
Correct.
you just know. And as they start digging, they start smelling the when you smell the the death
corpse,
and all of that. They start seeing the flesh, the mud. So it's all intertwined and it's starting to look gross. I was just like, oh my God, I could just...
It's like gooey, it's stinky. Oh, poor babe. Oh, the decay.
Exactly. At this point, this is where police start figuring out, like, we're no longer looking for just Heather. Now, we're probably going to find more bodies. Fred actually confesses to 2 more murders. This is where he confesses that he murdered Shirley Robertson. That Sunday, February 27th of 94, they take him back to the house. So that way he can show them, okay, well, where is Shirley at? He starts showing them kind of where all the bodies at. Can't really remember.
And then suddenly he has a lapse of memory where he's like, I don't remember any of this.
I don't know if he just doesn't want to confess, because I didn't get if he confessed to all of them or he just confessed to the 3, which is Heather, Shirley Robertson, and then the name he couldn't remember. So I don't know, as they start digging, then he starts like, well, okay.
Confessing more and more. Got it.
So in total, they find 12 bodies. There's 5 different locations. It took them 114 days to find all 12 or what they could find.
Yeah.
All victims were decapitated, dismembered, and gagged and tortured. First set of bones that they find is Heather and West. This is Rose and Fred West's first child. They found that Anna's toes were cut off, and then some of her body was buried separately. Not too far away, but it was buried separately.
That's so weird.
I know. The next victim was going to be Rena West. Obviously, this was Fred's first wife, who he married in 1967. Rena would disappear in 1971. Her remains were also found in Finger Post Field. She was dismembered. Her fingers and toes were cut off as well.
It's a weird thing to... sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, next victim would be Charmaine West. She would be murdered also in 1951, probably earlier on, by Rose. This one was by Rose. She played a part. She did it on her own. When Fred came out of prison is when he dismembered and buried her body. Her fingers and toes were also cut off.
So the toes and fingers must be Fred's, mark, right? Because that doesn't sound anything that Rose has done, right? She's been abused, she's punctured, she's beat, but, or, because we'll get in some details as well, but it doesn't say anything about ever cutting somebody's fingers off. having a fetish or anything like that. So it doesn't mention it. I find it odd.
Yeah, it's odd. I guess, like you said, it's probably his thing. The next victim would be Carol Ann Cooper. Carol was actually staying at a children's home. It's called Pine Children's Home. And whenever she could get permission, on the weekends, she would go spend time with her boyfriend. And that weekend, she just happened to hang out, went to the movies, so on and so forth. And she was actually going back home when she disappeared in November 10th, 1973, while trying to get onto a bus. She was found dismembered, and she was actually the first victim to be found in the cellar.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
And then evidence shows that she was tied up, gagged, tortured, and raped, and more than likely probably stabbed. And I think she would be the first victim that they actually, when you were in the cellar, they have like these support wooden beams running across. And I think she would be the first victim that he would tie and torture and wait to murder his victims.
Oh, it's like the way you slaughter animals, right? I've heard, I don't know how it happens, but I heard that you like puncture, get the blood out, and then it's like a long waited torture.
It is. And I think this is the beginning of probably the rest. The next one would be Linda Golf. She was actually going to a private school on Midland Road. She left home suddenly. I guess, I'm not sure if she was just trying to figure herself out or what, but she left home suddenly, leaving a note to her parents and said, "Don't worry about me, Mom, Dad, I'll be fine. I found a flat. I'm good."
Well, she was the one that was girlfriend to one of the lodgers.
Yes, that's how she ends up at the flat, because she ends up dating somebody there. She would later become a seamstress. I can't say it. Seamstress. There you go.
I was like,
sorry.
Seamstress.
Sorry, guys. It's a lot of like notes to take in.
No, it is.
And she would be real friendly with the lodgers, so on and so forth. 2 weeks later, Linda's mom hasn't heard from her, anything like that. So she's like, okay, you know what? Let me go see where she's staying. So she ends up at the West home asking for Linda because she hasn't heard from her in 2 weeks. Of course, Rose answers the door, and she initially denies that she's ever been there. And then she's like, well, she hasn't been here. I don't know what to tell you. But then the mom noticed, well, you're wearing my daughter's slippers, so how was she not here? I see her clothes hanging on your clothesline. I don't understand. At that point, Fred comes to the door, changes the story, and said, well, no, she was here, but she left with her boyfriend and left everything behind. She disappeared or vanished, as they want to say, in April 1973. Her body was also found dismembered, and she was actually found in the downstairs restroom.
Ay, Dios.
She was gagged with tape. Her toes, finger, and kneecaps were removed. It's crazy how some of these they're so parallel, and then some of them are so different.
It's almost like, because it seems like he's trying something new every single time. Because where he murders one of them, finds one of them, the other one he's already bound, gagged, he's abused, and it's almost like he keeps escalating to trying out new things.
So the next one would be Lucy Partington. She was actually at a university, like out of state, going to university. She comes back home December of 1973 for Christmas. 2 days later, she disappears. After leaving her friend's home, which she was probably getting on the bus, another one. And her mom did report her missing, but of course, to no avail, she was never found. Her remains were found in the cellar. She was tortured, sexually assaulted. The next one would be Juanita Mott. She is believed that she was traveling, and of course, hitchhiking. She actually vanished the day before her friend's wedding in April of 1975. Again, she was reported to the missing bureau, but to no avail, she wasn't found. Her remains were found in the cellar, and she was actually found with rope around her. And that's about all they say about her. They really don't say much. Okay, the next one would be Shirley Herbert. She was actually 15. She was still going to high school. She was working at these shops that I guess I'm going to butcher that one again too. These British names. That one right there.
I want to say it's Worcester.
Okay. And on November 14th, 1974, she's hanging out with her boyfriend after work. They're kind of sitting down at the fair. They're eating by the river. She's about to go home. He sees her get on the bus. They make a date for the next day. She never shows up. Her remains were found under the cellar. She is probably the one that they find the worst evidence in how she was murdered. They say that there was tape wrapped around her head with plastic inserts in her nostrils to where she's able to breathe. She was actually 15 years old. She was still in high school, and she was working at some shops in Worcester. On November 14th, her and her boyfriend at a fair. And it's kind of right by the river. So they're sitting down eating. He puts her on the bus, goes back home, and they make a date to see each other the next day. She never shows up. She is actually the worst of all the murders because they find her head wrapped in tape, all of it, and the only way she can breathe is
her whole head wrapped.
Her whole head wrapped, besides her nostrils.
Okay.
The only thing that they didn't wrap was her nostrils. So they inserted like little plastic tubes for her to be able to breathe in.
Oh my God.
You see, this is where he goes, where he's kind of changing the way.
So he masks her. You know, you know what it makes me think of? You know, when they try to clone, like actors, they'll clone their face and they'll cover the whole mask to to mask that face, so then they can reuse it. Like if they're gonna use a dead body in that part of the video or that movie, then they'll use that. Sorry, I don't.
No, it's weird. Right? Yeah, because you're picturing how they would have done that. But
or it's like you know what it is? It sounds like he's mummifying her.
Probably. The next victim, I'm gonna torture this, so I'm gonna have Jose Teresa.
This is the
right?
one. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was actually a Swiss student attending a school in London.
Teresa Seigenthaler. I'm so sorry.
That's why I just said Teresa. I'm sorry.
Now I understand when people try to speak Spanish. It's horrible. I'm sorry.
So she was actually, I'll repeat it again. She was a Swiss student attending a college in London, and she was studying to be a secretarial studies. She disappeared on Easter Sunday in 1974. She was hitchhiking, trying to go back to Ireland to go visit her family. Her remains were found in the cellar, and it doesn't go into like how she was found. It just said her remains were found in the cellar. Shirley Ann Robertson is the next one. She was actually a lodger and a prostitute while she was staying in the West Home. She is believed...
Sex worker, but yes.
Yeah, okay. She is believed to think that she could replace Rose because she ends up becoming Fred's lover.
Oh.
But she's also sleeping with Rose.
Okay.
And so at that point, it is believed that Rose might have been a little jealous and said, she's got to go. There's only one person, and that's me. Only one wife, and that's it.
Really?
Uh-huh. That is what it said. But Shirley was also sending pictures to her family and saying, this is who I'm going to marry. And you see some of those pictures where Fred's holding her hand. And so she ends up becoming pregnant at this time.
Okay.
So then she disappears or is last seen in May of 78.
Because we know how Rose is. Anytime you're in the way, and she, just like she did to, is it Rena?
Yes.
Right? Rena, she was like, I don't want her here. I don't want anything to do with her. But who else was, there was someone else that I feel like was competition with her, was her child. Remember, I think she reminds me of Caroline.
Okay.
Do you know how Anne Marie had to like adapt to her environment? And I feel like she didn't give her the heartache that Charmaine did.
Yes.
And I think that's how she was able to survive with this.
Which probably goes back to because she knows how her sister was tortured as far as like being abused and all of that. So that's probably why Anna Marie was like, ooh, she was in, what do you call it? She was in survival mode.
Okay.
So, I mean, at least that's what I think. I don't know. Because,
no, I think so too.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
And you're like, okay.
It's because you answered it.
Because I couldn't think of like, it's survival mode. The next victim would be Allison Chambers. And she was a rebellious teenager. She lived in a child home in Gloucester. I hope I'm saying that right. And she was actually a frequent visitor at the West home on Cromwell Street.
Okay.
She eventually became their nanny.
Oh.
I was like, here's another nanny.
I know.
And it said she is believed to probably wanted constant attention.
Which some of them mostly did.
Yeah, because they all seemed like they were trouble almost.
In some way, yeah.
In some way. She actually disappeared in August of 79, shortly before her 17th birthday. Oh. And I was just like, híjole, these girls were so young. Her remains were found in the garden. Her skull was wrapped around with a belt, and she was also gagged. That's kind of all it says about her. And Heather is believed to be the last murder victim of Rosemary and Fred West. With her, it is believed that she was murdered in 1987. Okay. And her remains were found in the garden. And that one, they found rope around her neck. She was dismembered and she was tortured. Okay. And those are the 12 victims that were found in the West home. Okay.
That's upsetting, heartbreaking. That's a lot of bodies in one house.
Mm-hmm. And they actually, the reason why it kind of stopped at the cellar is because he had too many bodies and he didn't have any more room to put them. So that's why he went into the restroom. That's why one of them was found in the restroom. That's why he went into the patio, the garden. And at one point, the cellar turns into a room for some of the kids. Mm-hmm.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Ew, that man's disgusting.
Yep. Because remember, they go on and Rosemary goes on and has more children. So you got to put them somewhere. So that's his way of saying, okay, well, I'm no longer going to use the cellar. So let's divide it into rooms.
Ugh, that's vile.
Yeah.
With that, on that part, this is where the trial starts.
Can I tell you something real quick? Yeah. Right before you go into the trial? So when I was doing my investigation, I came across Barry West. Mm-hmm. Barry West is Fred and Rosemary's fourth child. So allegedly, at the age of 7, he witnessed his 16-year-old sister's murder. Okay, mind you, Heather's 16, mm-hmm. walking in late. And so at 3 a.m., that's the time she's walking in, and she almost makes it to her room. Her room is across from Barry's room, which is in the cellar. So as she's walking to her room, Rose sees her. Rose starts slapping the shit out of her, calling her a slag, not paying attention. Fred comes over. Fred comes over, grabs her by the neck as Rose is slapping her. He kind of like tips over her feet and she falls to the ground. Mind you, he's still holding her neck. He's still holding her neck as she's falling to the ground. Falls to the ground. Rose starts stomping her about maybe 5 times. Mm-hmm. And at this point, Barry's like, oh my God, I can't believe. Is he
watching all of this?
Yes, I can't believe I'm seeing this. Because he's remember, his room is right across from Heather in the cellar.
Okay.
So there's a small crack where he's watching this happen. So that's going on. He sees all of this, and then he starts he's still watching, but he could also hear this, because mind you, when you're hearing plastic, it's kind of like that weird sound, like that cracking.
Yeah.
So can you imagine hearing that and then seeing your father wrapping your sister in that plastic, trying to hide the body?
So, oh my God,
It's disturbing, isn't it?
it is.
So at that time that Fred is wrapping Heather up, Rose went to go get a bucket, go grab a brush, and start scrubbing the floor and saying, I need to get rid of this. I need to clean this up. I need to get rid of the evidence. So he's watching all of this. He's watching Fred wrap his sister, his mom saying, I need to clean this up, scrubbing the floor, trying to get rid of the evidence. And then he is asked to disguise his sister's grave, make it look nice, make it like nothing's here.
Let me just say that there has to be some truth to this. This seems like this is intense for somebody to make up. Mm-hmm. And
he's probably not part of the trial because he was underage.
Yeah.
So that's probably why you didn't hear his testimony. So.
Oh, that's intense. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me first start off by saying this. Fred, you can tell, is a despicable human being. Mm-hmm. But Fred had already confessed to the murders, right? And mentioned that he acted alone. Mm-hmm. In the interview with the police, there's a recording of it. Yeah. And in the recording, he says this: I acted alone and Rose had nothing to do with it, which would leave Rose free to do whatever she wants, of course. But on January the 1st, 1955, at 1:40 p.m., Fred was dead in his cell. The prison governors was under fire that Fred was able to commit suicide under their watch, because it left most of the blame to Rose, which is okay with me, right? Mm-hmm. But somebody should pay the price. I think it's just one of those moves that Fred had constantly did. I feel like Fred in his life when he was younger, somebody else always took care of him, his brother. And whenever he was doing his actions like this, somebody else was taking care of him, which was Rose. Mm-hmm. And I always feel like in these cowardly moments, he always ran. Mm-hmm. Because when it got too hot, it became too much for him. Well, Detective John Bennett was concerned that the news would affect the trial and the witnesses. So they ended up moving about, I want to say, a good hour away the trial before anything started. Mind you, because they wanted to start the hearing. Mm-hmm. And the hearing was to see, of course, if this would even go to trial. I don't even know why that was even a question, but by law, they have to go through it, right? So before the trial starts, even begins, there's a lot of pressure. If Rose ends up the same way, then there's no way, meaning if she ends up committing suicide, mm-hmm. no one pays the price for these killings. All these 12 victims that you're referring to. And there could be more. There's mm-hmm. just, nobody says that there. I'll explain in just a little bit what he says, but in actuality, there's no bodies to it. So there's nothing to say that Fred did commit more.
Yeah.
Okay, so after all this happens, 2 months after Fred's suicide on October 3rd, 1995, in Winchester Crown Court, Rose West, age 41, begins her trial. This is where I told you that they had to kind of go an hour away, mm-hmm. because their media is going, it's intense.
Crazy. Everybody wanted a story.
Correct. Mm-hmm. Everybody wanted a story. They're paying people for an exaggerated story. Mm-hmm. Any of the victims, for example, they're trying to pay. Mm-hmm. So they know that there's so much going on that they're like, you know what? Let's take it away to Winchester Crown Court, and it'll be easier over there, kind of. So on the first day of trial, Prosecutor Brian Levinson states that Rose West only has circumstantial evidence. And a lot of the time, we don't know what circumstantial evidence is. Well, it means evidence that is reliant on inference to connect it to conclusion of a fact, in other words. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if a crime was committed and someone witnessed that crime. Let's say someone witnessed a robbery at a convenience store. And they witnessed it, meaning the robbery happened and they saw you running out on foot and saw you running away from the crime at the moment. That's considered circumstantial evidence. They can build something based on if they have enough evidence from people. So this is the important part. So the prosecutor said he's got a lot on his case. Let me go ahead and start calling. And he goes off the bat. He goes straight to, he calls Daisy, which is Rose's mother. Daisy takes this moment to not look at Rose while she's being questioned. I don't know if it's guilt. I don't know if it's because she's about to state certain things and she's about to sentence her daughter. So I don't know why she's not making eye contact, but she's not doing it. So they say she has a very timid voice. So she said that one time Rose went over and she's quoted this, saying that one time when Rose visited her, that Rose said, well, there's nothing Fred won't do, including murder. And she also says that to the court that she looked frightened by Fred. So it's so weird. I feel like she's blaming Fred for the entire thing, right? Trying to save her daughter. But at the same time, I feel like she knows that there's more to this. So then Carolyn Owens is called in on the stand, right? And she has to recall everything that she just went through in the past with, she says that Fred raped her and that Rose brutally assaulted her. Since many of the bodies were found with the same robe buried with them in the court, they assumed that it must have came in the same manner as Carolyn, right? Because since she's saying, hey, this is how I was tied up, this is how I was raped, it's very repetitive on how they treat almost every single girl. It just escalates. So the next person that they was called was June Goff. And you mentioned that it's the mother of Linda Goff. She went to her house. She went to go ask, have you seen my daughter? And of course, Rose says, I haven't seen her. She hasn't been here. Nothing. She says, well, that's funny. You're using her slippers. Those are my daughter's slippers. And Fred comes into the situation and switches the conversation and says, well, she has been here, but she abruptly left and left her clothes. And that's where they left it at. But what the good thing is that the court saw with just that one statement is that it contradicts what Rose had said. In this story, it says that Rose had never met her. They knew that Rose lied because Linda was already dead underneath the bathroom. So that's how, by timeline of murder, from the time that she was murdered, from the moment that Linda went to go ask for her, and she says she's never been here. Oh yeah, she was, but she left. Is a contradiction because her body was already in the house buried. So that's why I was like, wait, how is this going?
Yeah, because it's like a 2 week span between the time that she left to the time that the mom went to the house.
Correct.
So she's in there.
It makes no sense. So as the trial keeps going, the next one to come up is Anna Marie. Trigger warning, this one has...
It's a lot. It's
a lot. And please, if you just want to step out of this, fast forward to maybe 30 seconds to a minute, I understand. So Anna Marie goes up and she mentions that at the age of 8, she had to wear a vibrator inside her and was forced to walk around the house while Rose would laugh. She also was forced to sleep with men. She was beaten and hit with a knife and kicked in the head by Fred I feel like this is already enough, right? She has all that going on. To make matters worse, she was pregnant by Fred at the age of 15. I say luckily, but I'm not the mother. I don't know how she would feel, but she loses the baby shortly after. I'm glad she didn't have it, right? Because you imagine having...
because the child,
reminder of Fred every single day.
That, and then the child could obviously come out with any type of deformity, anything
challenges.
Challenges. So yeah.
But I would, minus the trial, I would think it's a reminder of every single time. Who knows? It's just my thought process. And of course, the defense says that that's a huge leap for murder. And so I know they're doing their job, but it almost feels so heartbreaking to hear this. I get what they're saying, but it's true, right? They're saying, well, yeah, they raped, they tortured, but where's the murder part? Where's the details? Or where's Rose tied into this? Other than she just assaulted them. Okay, what else? So during the trial, the jury wanted to see 25 Cromwell Street. I didn't know that they were allowed to do that.
Well, but go ahead.
Yeah, a field trip.
Yeah, they do. Sometimes if the jury asks for it, and the location is still available, because it's done here in the States too. So if you ask for it, you can go.
That's so interesting.
Because I guess people want to transport they want to
experience.
It kind of experience, like, let me walk in, let me see what I feel, let me see, like, do I get some sort of vibe? So I can understand that.
And I have to say, I feel like I would do the exact same thing. If I was in that situation, I would want to see it for myself, because it's one thing to hear basement. It's one thing to hear restroom, garden. I want to see it for myself, to see where the restroom is placed. How can the body fit underneath it? How much space is there? Even though it's a small place, they said that you can hear everything throughout like other people will testify, who I don't bring up, that they do mention, oh no, there's no way Rose didn't hear anything, because it's just I could hear them. And some of the lodgers would say, no, I could hear them. We could hear everything that was going on in the house, because it wasn't that big.
It's crazy, right? Because when you hear, oh, they took in lodgers, Rose was doing her thing, and it was an upstairs, downstairs. So it's crazy.
They wanted to see 25 Cromwell Street. So the judge agreed, and I guess to visually walk through the crime scene, as we mentioned. And the jury walked around, and they noticed how depressing the house felt. I mean, to say the least, right?
Yeah, because that's, I think, 10 bodies that were found in just that location.
And without repeating myself, they went through the same thing that we just visually taught, or we just mentioned. When they did return to the court, the jury heard the tape recordings from Rose. So you know how they had tape recordings from Fred? Well, they also had it from Rose when she was being interviewed by the police. Well, the police, during the interview, asked her, what happened to Heather and the day she disappeared? So Rose says, oh, I gave her money, and then I went shopping. So meaning, I left. When she said when she returned, Heather was gone. I don't know what's going on. But when the police were immediately, because this is their thing. It's usually question after question, right? They come back with, well, where did you get the money from? They said her tone completely changed, and it turned harsh. And I feel like it's perfect, because the jury gets to hear it. She says, I can't fucking remember. What do you think? I'm a bloody computer? She's all, if you really care, you would do your job. Which is perfect, because I'm like, okay, if you had doubts in between this is exactly who she is. She also she mentioned that she spoke to Heather in 1987, but that's something that was interesting. The court was like, hold on, you spoke to her in 87? She was already dead. There's no way you spoke to her. And so Rose says, well, I can't, what sounded like my daughter. I'm sorry? You don't know what your child sounds like? No, girl. Anyway, she mentioned many times that she was not aware of the murders happening in the house. This is where she is taking no responsibility. She is throwing it onto Fred, and she's like, I don't know what's happened. They're questioning, Rose, should you come up onto the stand? And of course, her lawyer's like, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. You have the right to say no, right? Well, of course, like every single, I've seen this in many situations where I've heard plenty of podcasts where they'll say, hey, do you want to do you want to waive the right to be on the stand?
Yeah.
And they're like, no, I've got this. I'm going to convince her. Rose even says, I'm going to convince the jury that I'm the victim. So put me up there.
That goes back to how, because they got away with it for so long.
So long. They feel like they're going to get away with it again. So, of course, she says, yes, let's go. And so this is where the trial almost feels like this is the part that's the most important thing. This is where they want to know. So she begins her story. And Rose, her lawyer's like, of course, babying her on how everything started, right? Oh, well, Rose, how did your life begin? How was your upbringing? Rose takes advantage and she says, she doesn't once mention that her dad raped her. She mentions that a man raped her, but doesn't say who it was. This is so, she's still covering for her dad.
Yeah, because remember, it's programmed in her head that it was okay. It was okay for him to do that because that was his property.
And, let me tell you something. I feel like this is the part where I do feel where she was almost, how do I say this without sounding like a fucking dick? I almost feel like she was a small victim to her situation in her past, right? As a child.
She could be. But as an adult,
no. Correct.
So you can't say that because she was a victim.
Child Rose is sad. I feel sad for her.
Yes.
Because of the circumstances. Not adult Rose. No.
Because she knew, remember, we go back to, she knew what she was doing. Because as you go into detail in some of these, with some of these victims, you see how she was abusive. So she knew.
Yes.
So we don't.
No, correct. No, I know.
Yeah, that's why I was just like,
yeah,
just say it because she still went through pain. You know what I mean? But.
So this trial can go on and on and on, but the one thing that she does do, which is consistent throughout the whole thing, is that she mentions that in reference to Fred, that she fell for Fred's lies, and that when she was asked about Charmaine, she said she started resisting my care, but denied murdering her, even though Fred wasn't even around for Charmaine. Fred was nowhere to be found because he was in jail. So, but of course she denied it. Denied. After they started asking her about Caroline, right? And she said that she wanted it to stop. But when Fred was treating her like that, I wanted it to stop. And I also am a victim like Caroline. What? You're a victim like Caroline?
And she's actually physically here to tell you otherwise.
Mind you, she's playing victim to her situation. And man, I don't know how she thinks she's going to get away with this. Don't worry.
Because they have.
Yeah, well, don't worry. It's not about to. When they asked her about Linda, remember Linda?
Linda Goff?
Yes, yeah. Linda Goff. Rose said, oh, it wasn't me. What wasn't you? And they're like, well, it's because that wasn't me. Like, I don't know. And they're like, excuse me? Linda Goff, we're trying to ask you, like, what happened in that situation. Her mom came and asked you about the slippers, and how come you were wearing her clothes? Oh, I don't know. I had nothing to do with that. She says, I don't recall. I mean, this woman is denying everything and has this sudden amnesia whenever she needs it. So finally, when they do ask her about Anna Marie, that she thought the world of Anna Marie. She's so sweet, right? Don't lock her up. When it comes to Anna Marie, she finds her she thought the world of her.
Again, another victim that is here and is testifying, telling you, and you're still going to deny it.
this is the I think this is where she shows her ignorance, right? This is where I feel it plays against her.
Yeah.
Because where she thinks she's smarter than everyone else, it automatically shows her intelligence and her lack of. Well, when they finally asked her about Fred, she said, Fred, do you think I would have lived with a murderer? She goes, I just couldn't. She goes, I wouldn't be able to live with a murderer. She says, so no, I didn't do it. I didn't do it and he didn't do it. And if I knew about it, I would have been gone. It pisses me off so much. I'm laughing because I'm upset. I'm not laughing like it's funny. I'm laughing at her stupidity.
And she also forgets that she had children living in the home. So some of these children eventually, years later, when they're able to talk about it. So, come on, girl.
And this is, mind you, when they're cross-examining her. But I had nothing to do with it. So, of course, they said, so you didn't love Fred? No. Fred and I had two separate worlds. He had his mind and I had mine. And they're like, oh, that's no, that's interesting. They're like, well, you wrote a letter just recently. Mind you, the trial's in 1992. They're like, you just wrote a letter to Fred in 1992. And you said, remember, I love you. And I love you always. And everything will be all right. I'm sorry.
But you didn't.
I'm sorry. Just repeat that one more time. You do or you don't love Fred. And you do or he did not commit it. You know, this is the one thing that the letters do come back and play a great role.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because they have like letters of her past as well. She even mentions Charmaine, where she says that Charmaine likes it rough, and I think that was her innuendo to Fred to tell him, like, hey, just FYI, I murdered her. When you get out, take care of it. I'm sure there was a lingo to what they had, like we all do. But anyway, back to the trial. So later they played Fred's interview where he takes the full blame and he says Rose had nothing to do with it and denies raping them. I'm sure Rose is eating it up, honey. But finally, on November 22nd, 1995, Rosemary West was sentenced to life in prison without parole. When the spectators outside heard that she got life in prison, they were just screaming and happy because she deserves to be in prison. Mind you, she's still alive to this day.
Yep. And it's 10 life sentences.
Yeah.
Yep. Because she was charged for 10. The sad thing is that she was in charge for Brenna's murder, and she was in charge for Anna McFall's murder. And
we could be here screaming like she should have been blamed for all of them. But at least she will never see the light of day out and about anymore. And I feel like it should hopefully give a little bit of peace to the families, to anybody that was a victim to her, is that she will be in there for the rest of her life. And hopefully she meets Fred wherever in the dark hole of pits of wherever where they deserve to be.
Yeah.
With that said,
we are done. It's been a long journey, our first one.
Yes.
So please bear with us. We made a lot of mistakes along the way.
And we're going to keep making mistakes.
Yeah. We'll get better at it, but this one was a big one. This one was a lot. It was a lot of triggers for me, so I had to take a lot of breaks. But yes, thank you for your patience.
And thank you for that, because I feel like along the way I did want to say something, but I was like, I'm going to wait to see.
Yeah, so that's why, it again, later on, maybe in future, I'll talk about it. But yeah, it was a lengthy one.
Thank you for listening. Dame un besito because we got to go. Bye.
Bye, guys.